Life is a series of choices, and one of the most important choices we face is knowing when to stay and when to walk away. It's not always clear. Sometimes we are faced with difficult situations where we feel torn between loyalty and self-preservation, between hope and reality. But in these moments, our ability to make the right decision shapes our future. The first step in making this decision is self-awareness. When you truly understand yourself, your needs, and your emotions, you gain the power to assess whether a situation or relationship is serving you well. You need to ask yourself, does this bring me peace, or does it drain my energy? Self-awareness helps you identify when something no longer aligns with who you are or where you're going. Next, trust your intuition. Deep down, we all have an inner guide, a voice that nudges us in the right direction. Often it's easy to ignore that voice, but when you take a moment to pause and listen, you'll realize it's been there all along, whispering the truth to you. Sometimes we try to rationalize staying in situations that no longer serve us, but when we listen to our gut, we often find the courage to walk away. It's also crucial to recognize toxic relationships and environments. There will be times when the people around you, or the environment you're in, are not conducive to your growth. It's not easy to walk away, especially when you feel obligated or guilty, but remember, your peace matters more than anything else. A toxic relationship does not define your worth, and staying in it only delays the healing you deserve. Setting boundaries is another important tool. Boundaries are not walls. They are bridges to self-respect and self-love. When you set boundaries, you are teaching others how to treat you. Knowing when to stand firm and when to leave is essential to preserving your well-being. Boundaries are not meant to hurt others, but to protect your own peace and energy. Finally, there's the power of personal growth and change. Sometimes, staying in a situation that challenges us allows us to grow. But growth doesn't always come from staying in the same place. Sometimes walking away from something that holds us back opens the door to new opportunities that allow us to evolve into the person we are meant to become. Ladies and gentlemen, remember that both staying and walking away are acts of strength. Knowing when to do each is part of the journey towards becoming the best version of yourself. Trust yourself. Set your boundaries, and know that you have the power to choose the life you deserve. The journey is yours. Stay when it feels right, and walk away when it's time to heal and grow. Self-awareness is one of the most powerful tools we can possess when it comes to navigating life's decisions, especially when it comes to knowing when to stay and when to walk away. It is the foundation of making choices that are in alignment with our true selves, guiding us towards paths that support our well-being, happiness, and growth. The more self-awareness we become, the clearer our understanding becomes about what serves us and what no longer does. Self-awareness begins with understanding who we are at a deep level. It's not just about knowing your likes and dislikes, but about connecting with your inner essence, your values, your desires, and your emotional needs. It's about recognizing what truly matters to you and what brings you peace, fulfillment, and a sense of purpose. In this process of self-exploration, we start to gain insight into our strengths and weaknesses, our desires and fears, and what kind of environment or relationships nourish our soul. When we are self-aware, we can begin to recognize patterns in our lives that may not be serving us. Sometimes we stay in situations, jobs, or relationships that are draining our energy or keeping us stuck because we haven't yet developed the clarity to understand the impact they are having on our well-being. Self-awareness allows us to step back and assess the situation with fresh eyes. We can begin to ask ourselves the tough questions. Does this situation align with who I am becoming? Does this relationship contribute to my growth? Or is it holding me back? Am I thriving in this environment? Or am I simply surviving? The beauty of self-awareness is that it allows us to identify when something feels out of sync with our inner truth. It helps us recognize the subtle signs, whether it's a feeling of discomfort, a nagging sense of dissatisfaction, or a deep inner knowing that something isn't quite right. This is when we begin to distinguish between situations that challenge us to grow and those that drain us or cause us harm. For example, in a relationship, we may have moments when we feel loved, appreciated, and supported. But over time, if we become aware of patterns that involve emotional manipulation, disrespect, or neglect, self-awareness will help us notice these behaviors before they become deeply ingrained. Instead of dismissing our feelings or tolerating mistreatment, we become attuned to what is happening and are able to make decisions from a place of clarity rather than confusion or fear. We realize that we deserve respect, kindness, and care, and we are empowered to walk away when these things are no longer present. Self-awareness also empowers us to understand our emotional responses. We may often find ourselves reacting to situations based on past experiences, unresolved trauma, or fear of change. But when we practice self-awareness, we learn to observe our emotions without being controlled by them. We begin to notice our emotional triggers, and in doing so, we develop greater emotional intelligence. Mike, this allows us to make decisions based on what we truly need in the moment, rather than being swayed by old patterns of behavior. Another aspect of self-awareness is the ability to recognize our boundaries. Boundaries are essential to maintaining our emotional health and creating relationships that are respectful and fulfilling. Without self-awareness, it can be easy to let others overstep our boundaries, or to ignore the warning signs that indicate we are compromising too much of ourselves. But when we are aware of our limits, we can clearly communicate them to others and protect our energy. We become more confident in saying no when something doesn't feel right, and we become more comfortable walking away from situations or people that violate our boundaries. Ultimately, self-awareness is about tuning into our intuition. It's about learning to trust our instincts and honor our inner wisdom. It helps us discern when to stay and fight for something that aligns with our values, and when to walk away to preserve our peace and mental health. It gives us the clarity to let go of what no longer serves us, even when it's hard or uncomfortable. And as we cultivate self-awareness, we become more in tune with who we are and who we are becoming. We begin to make choices that reflect our truest selves, not based on external expectations or fleeting desires, but on what resonates deeply within us. We learn to trust our journey and understand that sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is let go and walk away, trusting that something better awaits us. In the end, self-awareness is not just about knowing when to stay and when to walk away. It's about learning to trust ourselves enough to make the choices that are right for us, choices that honor our growth, our well-being, and our ultimate happiness. Once fully aware, trusting your intuition is one of the most profound and powerful tools we have at our disposal. It's that quiet inner voice that speaks to us in moments of uncertainty, guiding us toward the decisions that are in alignment with our true selves. Yet in a world full of distractions and outside influences, it can be easy to overlook or dismiss this intuitive guidance. However, learning to trust our intuition can be the key to knowing when to stay and when to walk away. Learning to trust your intuition requires practice. In the beginning, it may feel difficult, especially if we are used to relying on logic or external validation for decision-making. But as we tune into our feelings and start acknowledging that inner voice, we begin to recognize it more clearly. Over time, our intuition becomes louder and more distinct, guiding us with greater confidence. The more we trust it, the more we experience its wisdom, and the more we rely on it to navigate life's decisions. Trusting your intuition is not about being impulsive or making hasty decisions. It's about taking the time to connect with yourself and listen to the wisdom that is already present. It's about learning to discern between the voice of fear and the voice of truth. Our intuition often speaks softly, but it has the power to guide us toward decisions that will lead to fulfillment, peace, and personal growth. When we trust it, we honor ourselves and our journey, knowing that the answers are within us, always waiting to be heard. Intuition is a gift that we all possess. It's an internal compass that, when trusted, can lead us to the right answers in times of uncertainty. By learning to trust our intuition, we empower ourselves to make decisions that are true to our deepest selves, helping us know when it's time to stay and when it's time to walk away. Being able to recognize and honor our boundaries is one of the most important skills we can develop in order to make healthy and empowered decisions, especially when it comes to knowing when to stay and when to walk away. Boundaries are the invisible lines that define where we end and where others begin. They represent our needs, our values, and our sense of self-worth. They help us protect our emotional, mental, and physical well-being, allowing us to show up in the world in a way that is authentic and true to who we are. When we have clear boundaries, we are able to navigate relationships and situations with more ease and confidence. Boundaries provide us with the framework to evaluate whether a relationship, a job, or a situation is aligned with our values and needs. If our boundaries are respected, we can thrive. If they are violated, we are forced to confront the discomfort, frustration, and emotional strain that comes with compromising ourselves. Many people struggle with setting and maintaining boundaries because they fear rejection, conflict, or disappointing others. We may be conditioned to believe that saying no or drawing a line in the sand is selfish or unkind. But the truth is, healthy boundaries are an essential aspect of self-care. When we fail to establish or honor our boundaries, we are often left feeling drained, overwhelmed, and resentful. We may allow others to take more from us than we are able or willing to give, which ultimately leaves us feeling depleted and disconnected from our own needs. One of the first steps to recognizing when to stay and when to walk away is to assess whether our boundaries are being respected. If we feel that someone consistently oversteps our limits or disregards our needs, it's a clear sign that something is out of alignment. This could be in a personal relationship where someone is constantly taking without giving, or in a work environment where our time and energy are being drained without consideration. Regardless of the situation, when our boundaries are not being respected, it's an indication that it may be time to walk away or take a step back in order to protect our peace and well-being. Boundaries also help us to recognize when we are out of alignment with our own needs. Sometimes we may find ourselves in situations where we have ignored our own boundaries for so long that we don't even realize the toll it's taking on us. This can happen when we overextend ourselves, saying yes to everything without considering the impact on our emotional or physical health. Over time, we may feel overwhelmed, exhausted, or resentful, yet we continue to stay in situations that are no longer serving us. Recognizing that our boundaries have been compromised and taking action to restore them is an essential step toward regaining our sense of balance. Setting boundaries also involves knowing when it's time to leave situations or relationships that no longer serve us. Walking away is not always an easy decision, especially when it involves letting go of something that we have invested time, energy, or emotions into. But sometimes, the most loving thing we can do for ourselves is to walk away from environments or people that are toxic or harmful. This could be a job that is constantly draining us, a relationship that is no longer fulfilling, or a social group that brings negativity into our lives. Walking away doesn't mean we are giving up. Rather, it means we are choosing to honor ourselves and our needs over everything else. Sometimes, walking away is an act of strength, not weakness. It takes courage to walk away from what is familiar, especially when we fear the unknown. However, when we stay in situations that compromise our boundaries and violate our sense of self, we are ultimately doing ourselves a disservice. By walking away, we create space for new opportunities, relationships, and experiences that will better align with our values and aspirations. One of the key aspects of honoring our boundaries is learning to communicate them clearly to others. Boundaries are not always understood by those around us unless we are able to express them openly and assertively. This can be challenging, especially in situations where we fear confrontation or disapproval. However, it's important to remember that setting boundaries is a form of self-respect, and it allows others to understand our needs and limitations. The more we practice setting and maintaining our boundaries, the more empowered we become to navigate relationships and situations with clarity and confidence. Knowing when to stay and when to walk away is deeply connected to honoring our boundaries because it helps us understand what is in alignment with our values and needs. When our boundaries are respected, we are more likely to thrive and feel fulfilled in our relationships and pursuits. But when those boundaries are constantly violated, it's a sign that it may be time to step back, reevaluate, and choose a different path. It's about giving ourselves permission to walk away from what no longer serves us and to make space for what truly nourishes us. In the end, honoring our boundaries is not only about protecting ourselves, but also about respecting others. When we set clear and healthy boundaries, we create the foundation for more authentic and balanced relationships. By learning to recognize when our boundaries are being crossed and having the courage to walk away when necessary, we take control of our own well-being and create a life that is in alignment with who we truly are. The ability to recognize when a situation or relationship is no longer serving your growth is essential for personal development. Growth is a continuous process, one that is often marked by pushing beyond our comfort zones, taking on new challenges, and evolving into the best versions of ourselves. However, this growth is not linear, and there are times when we outgrow certain environments, relationships, or situations. Recognizing these moments and having the courage to walk away from them can be one of the most transformative decisions we can make. Outgrowing a situation doesn't necessarily mean that it was bad or harmful at the outset. Sometimes what we need at one point in our lives is no longer the same as what we need later. Growth requires change, and change often means moving away from what once worked and embracing what will help us continue to evolve. This can be a difficult realization, especially when we feel emotionally attached to a relationship, a job, or a lifestyle that we have invested a lot of time or energy into. Walking away from something familiar can be challenging, but it can also be an opportunity for profound transformation. When you begin to outgrow a situation, you may notice that you feel restless or unfulfilled. Something that once brought you joy or satisfaction may no longer resonate with your current desires or values. This feeling of disconnection can show up in various ways. You may feel a lack of enthusiasm for your work, experience emotional or physical exhaustion from a relationship, or find yourself questioning your purpose and direction in life. These feelings are often indicators that you have evolved and your surroundings or the people in your life are no longer in alignment with who you are becoming. Outgrowing a relationship can be one of the most difficult aspects of this process. We often hold on to relationships because of their history or the emotional connection we have. However, just because a relationship has a history doesn't mean it is healthy or conducive to your growth in the present. People grow and change, and sometimes those changes cause individuals to drift apart. If you find that a relationship is no longer bringing you joy, or if it is draining your energy and preventing you from being your authentic self, it might be time to reassess whether that relationship is serving your highest good. This doesn't necessarily mean that the relationship is toxic or that the other person is at fault. It simply means that both people may be evolving in different directions. Recognizing this and having the courage to step away or redefine the relationship is a key part of honoring your own growth. It's important to remember that outgrowing a relationship doesn't equate to failure. Instead, it's an acknowledgement of the natural course of change in both individuals. Similarly, outgrowing a job or career path can present a unique set of challenges. Many of us stay in jobs because of financial stability, security, or the fear of change. We may continue in a role or a company even when we no longer feel challenged or motivated. However, if you begin to feel stagnant, uninspired, or disengaged, it could be a sign that your current work is no longer contributing to your personal or professional growth. Staying in a job that no longer excites you or allows you to expand your skills can lead to frustration, burnout, and a lack of fulfillment.